Hello everyone, I'm Chase from Speaking of Courage. First off, thanks for watching. I know it's been a while since we posted an episode, but we hope to get back to our Medal of Honor profile soon. Donnie and I both work a lot, and it's kind of hard sometimes to get together to be able to make the show that we want to make and do the research and everything like that. So we're trying to do a little bit something different for you today again and show you the collection. For those of you who know me or who have watched the show for a while, you know that I collect militaria, uniforms, helmets, personal gear that belong to our soldiers who have served our country. I've always loved military history, but there's something powerful about touching the pieces used or worn by servicemen and women, being able to feel what they felt rather than seeing it behind a museum glass or in a picture or anything like that. My passion for historical objects started officially when I was in the U.S. Army, and I visited the Infantry Museum at Fort Benning, Georgia with my parents, and that's where I went to basic training. On display, they had one of the rare surviving uniforms of a regular Army soldier who served in the American Revolution. One of the first things you notice about that uniform, and a lot of older uniforms, is how small the soldiers were, how little they were, even though they were carrying such a big load, how tiny their frames were despite the burden that they were carrying. One thing I didn't notice until my dad pointed it out were there were the sweat stains inside the collar of the uniform. It took the coat from being some far-off historical treasure to being a real piece of clothing worn by a real human being, with hopes and dreams and struggles and hardships. And while I was staring at the coat and taking it all in, my dad said something to the effect of, "That's the sweat that built our nation," or "That's the sweat that earned our freedom." And I never forgot that. It wasn't until years later that I bought my first piece of real militaria, an M1917 World War I doughboy helmet, which I still have right here. My wife and I were buying our first house, and she said that I could buy a few things to help decorate. So I was looking for World War I art on eBay because I liked, that time period. And I actually found this helmet for $40 with the chin strap, a no-liner. When it arrived, I put it on my head, and it was just awesome. I couldn't imagine the fear and the anxiety of a soldier in the trenches. We've gone over World War I a couple times on this show. Imagine wearing this thin piece of metal, holding it in my hands. The best I can say is I was hooked. It was so powerful to be able to hold an object that a soldier would have carried during that terrible war. Since then, I've spent countless hours and quite a bit of money, as you can see, on my collection. It spans from the Spanish-American War to modern times. I have hundreds of uniforms, helmets, and medals and field gear. Some of it's almost worthless monetarily, and some of it is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But of all my pieces I have two definitive prized possessions, and I'm going to share one of those with you today. What I have here is my great-grandpa's pocket Bible, which he carried with him in the U.S. Navy. He served aboard the USS Bridge in World War I. And this Bible, in this leather pouch, was with him as he crossed the Atlantic several times, transporting troops back and forth to the battlefields of France. During this time, he was facing the dangers of the German Navy, the U-boats, and all the other hardships at sea. And he wrote several inscriptions inside of this Bible, including his name, Charles Richard Ashe, U.S. Navy, and on another one he listed New Year's Day 1917, USS Bridge at sea, and then he listed the date and the miles and longitude and latitude. Under that, he wrote the notation, stormy weather. Here in this small Bible was my great-grandpa's handwriting from over 100 years ago, from a time when his life and his future were uncertain. Another page has a small poem. The sea was tossed, the sky was gray, but on we sailed on Christmas Day. And below that he wrote, New York, peace and God blessings with us. My great-grandpa survived the war, and he had several children, including my grandpa Isburn and his brother George, both of whom served in World War II. My great-uncle Richard followed in his father's footsteps and served aboard the USS Navy on the USS Erie. My great-grandpa presented him with this Bible and wrote, God bless you and keep you. Pray much, and Dad's love is always with you. Dad. Richard was wounded in action when his ship was torpedoed on November 12, 1942. He was cited for bravery for standing by his battle station and performing other hazardous duties with a high degree of loyalty and personal fearlessness. Richard was injured by shells as they fell from the rack due to the ship listing. Eventually, the order was given to abandon ship as shells and ammunition exploded aboard the Erie. He went overboard with a fractured ankle and a fractured arm, and he swam for his life through the rough seas. Halfway to shore, he encountered flaming gasoline and oil coming towards him, but thankfully, he survived and made it home. This Bible then passed to my grandpa, Izzy, or Isburn, who was serving in the United States Army. He carried it with him in the closing days of the war and the European theater, where his unit liberated Pilsen, Czechoslovakia. My grandpa survived the war as well and returned home on the Queen Mary, which had been converted into a transport ship. He was at sea on New Year's Day 1946, just like his father had been in 1917. Underneath his father's writing, he wrote, HMS Queen Mary, with the corresponding latitude and longitude. Where Charles had written stormy weather, he noted that the weather was fair. Above the Christmas poem, he wrote, Aboard HMS Queen Mary, 1945, 12/25/45, and wrote the corresponding dates to below his father's. To some, this is just an old Bible with a leather cover, but to me it's 100 years of family history, a connection to my forebears, and a witness to all the hardships, fears, and dreams of men at war. On a side note, as I was making this and I looked at this under different light, I noticed the back of the leather pouch, and I noticed the faint writing that says Harry Ash, which is my grandpa's younger brother who served during the Korean War. So unbeknownst to me until right before filming, this Bible passed into another hand of another Ash, another one of my forebears in another war, and it carried him and gave him some solace. So that's why I like to collect. And like I said, that is my ultimate prized possession because it belonged to my grandpa. It was something he held dear, and it belonged to my great-grandpa, and it was something that he held dear. Dear enough to pass on to several of his sons, or actually all three of his sons, it seems now, which I'm excited to find. I have one other prized possession. If you guys are interested, I'd be happy to show you that as well. If not, I understand. We'll get back to our regular Medal of Honor profiles as soon as we can. In the meantime, definitely appreciate your guys' support. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you guys have any comments, suggestions, let me know. If you'd like to see more of the collection, by all means, let me know. I have Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard from all generations, all eras from World War I to the present specifically. And most of them I have researched, so I'd love to share that with you. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night.